Welcome to this episode of the Manifest Massively podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Renee Ray, and I have with me here Bridgette Heller. She is a mentor and podcast coach. She's also the host of the Strong and Capable podcast and a semifinalist in the Great American Speak Off. I also have the privilege of calling her friend, and she's definitely responsible that this podcast is live. So glad and excited to have her here. So, Bridgette, I'm going to let you take it away and introduce yourself, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, hello. I'm so excited to be on this podcast with you and to see you doing this. It's so exciting for me to watch you step into this place and use your voice to help others manifest massively. My name's Bridgette Heller, like you said, and I love sparkly things. I'm a podcast coach and I love to talk about mindset and emotional resilience. That's really where my heart is, and learning to have healthy communication with yourself,
Mm.
with God, the spirit, universe, whatever you name that, for you and everybody else, because hard conversations can get tricky. But if you know how to communicate with the first two, I can teach you how to communicate with the last one.
So good. So good. Yeah, so just to let the listeners in, we were deliberating and creating on this episode. I mean, it felt so in alignment to have Bridgette come on. She's definitely been a part of this journey, has so much to share. And I love her message so much, so needed. Emotional resilience, like you mentioned. You shared that you started off really with mental health awareness, which is obviously so needed. So today we honed in on really connecting that emotional resilience piece, that mental health awareness piece, and manifestation, because we're all humans and there's no escaping dealing with emotions. There's no escaping dealing with our mental health at some point. Like when we're on that manifestation journey, those are the things that tend to show up. What do you hear in that?
So, as someone who's had anxiety and depression, postpartum depression, really bad, one of my kids had depression while being pregnant. That was a whole journey, not fun. Um, I have seen that whenever I am in those places of real struggle, I mean, chemical, hormonal, like there is nothing I can do. This is happening and I'm living it, and it's hard to get out of bed, or I've been so anxious that I broke out in hives and hyperventilated. Things that I can't totally control, but I feel called. For me personally, manifestation has always been this thing that's in my life. I feel called to create, to be, to more abundance, bigger. It's like I'm drawn to transformation, really. Always, always has called me. But anxiety and depression has always held me back. So when you're in that dark place, and I mentioned this to you, Nicole, but when you're in that dark place, the voices in your head are very loud. You can't, you're not worthy, you're not enough, nobody likes you, you're going to ruin everything you have. What are your darkest fears? That's what shows up. So it's very hard to manifest anything or transform your life in any way when those are the consistent messages in your head that are happening constantly. And for me, to get out of those places, so a healthier place where I could see possibilities again, it was a combination of counseling and medicine and going to retreats with women who were in a place of massive abundance, and of seeing them and witnessing that it was possible to be different than what I was currently. I actually thanked a good friend just last Sunday because I was in such a negative place after my second kid that we were in a park, moms gather and have their kids all play. And so we're doing this kind of thing, and we were reflecting on high school. And she looked at me and she says, Bridgette, you had a bad high school experience. I was like, what? And here's the thing, I was in such a negative place. I didn't realize my language was showing negativity all the time. It wasn't until she said that where I realized my words did not match my heart.
Mm.
And so I needed her to say that bluntly so I could really take a look at what was happening in my head, what was coming out of my mouth, and realize that I was in a darker place than even I knew. because it was coming out of my mouth. It was manifesting in everything I was doing. So the spirit speaks softly, manifesting and working through the spirit and hearing those little whispers of possibilities. It's a soft thing. And when you've got that loud voice going on, you have to learn how to heal it so that then you can actually move towards the goodness and abundance that is meant for you.
I love that. First of all, I want to say I feel like in the manifestation world, this is not talked about enough. In other words, you don't often, I think a lot of people deal with that negative thinking, those dark moments, but we don't always feel like we can share about that. There's not a lot of spaces we can share about that. There's almost like this, I notice it all the time where I feel like people will sort of pull back and go into their hibernation mode because they don't want to share the fact that they are dealing with whatever their version of it is. We all have our version of it. And so I just love how perfectly you said that because we all deal with it at one time and another, and maybe even at different phases of our life. And just being able to acknowledge it, just being able to not have shame about it is so, so profound. Because otherwise, it's like if it's part of you that you feel like you have to hide, that you can't talk about, then how does it get healed? Right. And then
It won't get, yeah,
go ahead, go
sorry.
ahead.
It won't get healed, and also, at some point, it will come back to you. So even if you experience a lot of abundance, at some point, it's gonna boomerang back because if you don't heal, your body lets you know. I mentioned the hives. That's what was happening for me. I thought I had healed this huge chunk of myself, and all of a sudden, I'm breaking out in hives. I was having massive headaches. I was shutting down in ways that I could not control. My back would literally seize up and I couldn't get off the couch. Things I was like, what is wrong with me? I didn't do anything, but my body was letting me know there was work to be done. And
Mm.
so I had to really pause and reflect. So even if you think you worked through it on enough, right? Because that's what we sometimes do, just enough, and then move forward. You gotta really look honestly at yourself and heal it so that it doesn't boomerang back. It's not worth the boomerang.
And like you said, so that you can actually become available for, right? Like when we're in that place and we know it, we don't feel available for that desire fulfilled, that manifestation to fruition. So I feel like the next question, which is just, begs the question, right? Is how, so when someone's in that spot or they find themselves in that spot, what's the first thing that they do? What are the first few things that they do to, like you said, get themselves back into a perspective of possibility?
Well, I think there's several logical, like traditional, as I mentioned, counseling, medicine, whatever you got to do to quiet the storm so that you can have an honest look at yourself because it really has to do with looking in the mirror and looking at that person and saying, okay, what's really happening here? Like, what's really happening here? Without judgment, without disappointment and despair, just almost pulling yourself back. Maria Montessori, I was in a Montessori school for years, and she did clinical observations. She worked to take the emotion out enough to say what's actually happening with this child so that we can serve them. It's not because we do love them and we care about them. So what can we do to pull back enough and really look at why are they reacting this way? What are they doing? What are they looking for? What are they seeking for? And I loved the way she taught how to observe children because I realized I could do that with myself. Okay, I can pull back and say, okay, Brigette, you just had a little meltdown here. Why? Why did you have that meltdown? Without any judgment. It doesn't matter at this point because the thing's already done. You already had the meltdown. So, what triggered that? Was there something? Can you see anything or not? Because if you can't see something, that's okay too. Sometimes it's just enough to know that apparently when I go into this restaurant, it's too loud and I have a meltdown. Sometimes it's just enough to know that. And then maybe for now, you don't go to that restaurant until you figure out why. But I really think it's having honest conversations with yourself. When I first started the Strong and Capable, I started this thing called the 10-day I Am Challenge because I wanted women to start saying and seeing good things in themselves. I was literally driving down the road. I was like, okay, all right, God, how can I help women just love who they are, just love that person in the mirror? And this 10-day I am challenge just popped into my mind. I was like, I can do that. And the next thought was it needs to be on social media. Encourage them to post it. Okay, I could do that. And then the last thought, if you're going to ask people to do that, you got to do it. It's like, oh, okay, I can do that. That was a little more like, oh, all right. So I did it. I started it. And by the first time I did it, by day 3, I was like, this is stupid, bad idea. I don't believe these things. I can't confidently say I'm a good mom because my kids are fighting in the back. Like, this is not, I can't confidently say I'm kind because I don't feel kind right now. I feel like a loser because I'm saying this stuff. But like everything I knew about myself, I was questioning. And then I couldn't even come up with 10 things I knew about myself. So it started a really hard thing, but I pushed through because I was like, no, Spirit told me to do this. So I'm going to do it. And I always commit all in. And that's another thing is if you want to get out of the dark, you have to commit to the light. I
Mm,
have to. So when you get those whispers, follow all the way. Don't back down, not even when it gets hard. So I followed all the way. And the best part about following all the way is then the next time I did the challenge, when more women joined me, and day 3 or 4, they were like, I don't believe this. I can't do this. And they're secretly texting me behind the scenes saying, Bridgette, I really wanted to do this, but I just don't think it's truthful. And now I'm wondering if I'm full of pride, which is another weird one that comes up for especially women is I feel prideful in saying these things. I feel like a liar. I thought this is who I was, but maybe I'm not. So day 3 and 4, this all shows up for almost every woman who's ever done the challenge. And so I'm so thankful because I pushed through, but what it taught me was what every other human was going to go through when they did this. And I started to understand that I could now coach them through it because I had lived it. And most of what we go through is for other people. It's never for us. We go through the transformation, and once we've transformed, we invite others to follow. That's what
that's
it's about.
so true. Whether that's just our family, our friends, like just being that example, being that, yeah. So, and I loved how you said commit to the light. So, wouldn't you say that if you're in that moment, even if you don't necessarily have access to those positive thoughts, if just in the moment you commit that you will get through it, that you will get on the other side, like that can just be enough.
Yep. Yeah. Committing to yourself that you're worth it is a big one too. And I think, so many men and women carry worthiness wounds and family wounds. And so saying, I'm worth this, I have meaning, I have purpose, there's something on this earth that only I can do. Because nobody has lived the same life. Nobody has the same personality. Nobody looks just like you. Even if you're a twin, there's little differences. There is no one that can do what you can do, no one on earth. And so there is something we are all meant to do, I believe, that we're all meant to impact for good in some way. And that might literally be one of the most impactful women in my life. I wish if I can be like her, I will feel like I have left the world a better place. She's just a sweet, sweet older woman in my church who does potato donuts every Halloween, and the kids love to stop by her house, who approaches every single person with a smile and gives a hug and is so kind and loving. She doesn't do these like huge acts of service or own these massive businesses, but her kindness makes everyone feel better. And if that's what you're called to do, you will have left this world better.
So true.
So,
So, so true.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I think we don't give enough credit to those small, seemingly small, right? Of just who we get to be for ourselves, who we get to be in our community, who we get to be for the world around us. What I hear you saying is like finding that light and finding that purpose and committing to yourself, right? Is part of what leads us through those dark moments,
Hmm.
starts to change those mental patterns, starts to just, again, like I said earlier, I don't know why this is coming up, but like make yourself available for new ways to see things, new ways to be.
Yep. And sometimes we're forced into that. I keep having, as we've been talking, I keep having this moment pop into my head. So I'll share it. Like sometimes we're forced into it. A year and a half ago, there was some business stuff that I was struggling with. And I had been directed to do this thing and it wasn't coming together and it wasn't coming together. And there's tension in the household because it wasn't coming together. And my family needed the business to support the family. So there's a lot of tension. And one night, my cute husband, in frustration, he was like, "You know what? I've done what I can do. This is all on you." And him saying that, we're very close and he really is my best friend, but him saying that, I felt such a weight, such a heavy, heavy burden. And I remember laying in bed because that's where we're talking, a little late night pillow talk here, so heavy. And so I'm laying in bed and I remember my whole body physically freezing up and just knowing that there I had done everything I could do. There I had done everything and the weight was so heavy. And my little spirit revolted and said, "No, no, you're you've done what you can do. Your job is to release. Your job is to release." And as soon as I thought that, my whole body relaxed and I rolled over and went to bed. And the next morning, the thing that I had been fighting and struggling with in my business, it was call after email after message of people showing up for the thing. It was wild. And what it took was him. I was trying to force it, and it took him saying, "Yeah, it's all on you," for me to back off and say, "Actually, I've done what I can do, and I'm going to release this." So sometimes the hardest moments where we feel forced into a corner are actually the moments where we release it and then the miracles can come in and the good things can come in and things are actually manifested.
Yeah, there's a couple things I hear in that. One, in that scenario, it's almost like in a way he released it because there was something he was taking on about it. And then by him, he released it to you. It really almost gave you permission or an invitation to actually release it.
Mhm.
And I also think relating this back to manifestation, like obviously you were working towards something, you were creating something in your business, you're manifesting in your business. I feel like when we push, is when those voices can really become the loudest. Or when we feel like we are pushing and pushing and doing, and the results not coming in, we can start to feel unsupported or abandonment stuff can start to come up. And those voices can start to come in doubts, fears. I don't know why the word impatience came in there, but yeah, all of that can start to cloud our thinking, moving us then into worry, which obviously none of that is what you just described in terms of just releasing this. I have done what I can do. I am worth this. I'm not going to fret about it anymore. I'm going to be in the unknown with it. I think that's just such a powerful demonstration of like walking yourself through something like that or listening for, in your case, it's like you listened for the cues. He said this to you, and then what's there for me to do? And it's almost like it naturally showed up.
Mhm. Yeah, I think listening and like you said, when we're forcing it, and I've seen this again and again with clients I've worked with, when we're forcing it, we're forcing ideas and processes and procedures. I like a process and procedure. I have a 12-month calendar that is color coded behind me. I like order, okay? But when we are forcing things, really what shows up is our ego. And our ego, it really loves it when we're spinning on the I'm flawed and I must have not done this one sales pitch perfectly, or I took all those classes and apparently it didn't sink in because I'm doing this one method wrong. Or these phrases will show up to make us doubt everything we've done and everything we've become because our ego isn't being fed with success. And so releasing outcome is one of the biggest secrets I have found to manifesting in any way of any kind of abundance is actually the point where, and it takes a lot. I mean, I struggle constantly to trust and release, but it's that moment where you finally say, no, like you said, I've done what I've done and I am going to allow this to become. And it does. it does become. And usually it's not what we thought it would become. And honestly, usually it's better.
Agreed. Fully agree with that. I also think that ability to release gives us a break from because if we feel like we have to keep pushing and we have to keep forcing and we have to keep doing, then it almost drives up the negative mentality or the negative mental patterns or the negative emotional patterns. And when we're able to release it, whether you use the word surrender or releasing it to your higher power or just letting it go just for the sake of letting it go, it almost gives you space to just be, space to just enjoy life, space to be in the unknown. And I just think that's just such a powerful distinction where if we're holding on tight, and usually we are overthinking, we're trying to strategize, we're trying to think of, what do I need to do? Who do I need to talk to? And that pushing it's almost like fertile ground for more criticism, for more judgment, for more of that negative thinking.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, our little human minds really like us to have a box and order. And so we often push for this thing. But and the release is harder. But I was just thinking as you were talking about, so I speak at a lot of churches and I know who I am, I know where I'm going, I know how to get there. I talk about the things that distance us from feeling God and the Spirit in these churches. And I was just at a conference a couple weeks ago, and this person came up to me and shared a poem that they wrote about I am that I am. So this is really famous in the scriptures. Like God says, I am. Like that is but then if you pay attention to the scriptures, he doesn't say, I am kind, loving, good, da, 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 da. It's just, I am that I am. And I think this is a good example of how we need to live our life a lot of times. That I am. I just am. I don't have to worry about what that means or what it looks like all the time. It's okay to exist within this moment and become whatever happens the next moment and know that you will become something different in the next one and the next one. And so I think there is just a lot of power. And I have had it's interesting how many people I've had happen to this, but they always come up and they like to read a poem that they've written. And usually it's this phrase, I am that I am. And then this is not the first time, I kid you not, that this has happened to me. The next phrase of the poem goes something like, but God says, who are you? I don't know you. Like literally, this has happened multiple times to me that someone has written their own poem with the same thought and the same way of being. And so I think really, whether you're spiritual or not, it's important to release the boxes and to allow yourself to be who you are so you can get to know who that person really is. Because the boxes are not who you are. That's not who you are. And I think most of us don't even know really who we are until we allow ourselves to stop and pause and take out all the expectations, take out all the labels, and sit with I am that I am.
And I will add to that that actually is where your value lies, where your worthiness lies, and where you can come to accept your inherent worthiness just because you are, just because I am that I am. And that those boxes, we're taught to think that those boxes are what make us valuable. That if I check that box, if I check that box, then I'll have value. I can prove myself. But the truth, the ultimate divine truth is that value, that worthiness is inherent. It's already there. And so I hear that what you're saying, that process of letting those boxes go and coming back into the I am is also a reclaiming of your inherent worth and value.
Mhm.
And, it's a little counterintuitive, especially from our society today, but it's totally right on. I want to go back to those principles you mentioned. I think those are really important to talk about. Can you say them again? It was the I know who I am. I know where
I
I'm
was like, what
going,
principal assignment?
and then I know how to get there. Is that
I know how
right?
to get there. Yeah, those are the three. So this is a really interesting one too. So when I was in high school, as we've already mentioned, it wasn't glorious and beautiful for me. Weird that this has come up today, but you never know when you're in how conversation flows. I was going through a lot, but I was happy, but I was going through a lot. And I had a good friend look at me and she says, Brigette, why are you so happy with everything happening here? All this chaos. Why are you happy? And my first answer was because I eat a lot of bananas, because have a weird sense of humor and I thought that was funny. But my second answer was I know who I am, I know where I'm going, and I know how to get there. And those three phrases are not unique to me. I have thought they were for years, right? I know who I am, I know where I'm going, I know how to get there. For me, I know who I am has everything to do with spiritual identity and taking away the boxes like we were just talking about and what's underneath the boxes. That is your spiritual identity. This is your eternal truths, whatever you view those as, the things that are just true, that there is no arguing with as far as who you are, maybe before or after this life, during this life. What does that look like for you? That is your divine identity. And sitting on that changes how you approach everything. When you're going through the hardest stuff, it's the thing you lean back on. And if you don't have that, then you get really lost in the hard stuff. The hard stuff will throw you so far that it will be hard to come back from. So, and actually, every addiction recovery program under the sun teaches this same principle. You have to know who you are underneath it all. So, I know who I am. Because you know that, you might have some idea of where you're going in the eternities and even in this moment. So, it gives you direction. And then I know how to get there based on that same belief. You'll have a set of beliefs that you believe should be your guiding principles through life. And so those guiding principles are what you hold on to in the chaos. So I know who I am, I know where I'm going, I know how to get there. As I said, I thought was unique to me. It was something that popped out of my mouth and is something that as soon as you say those things, you're like, oh, that wasn't just me. That was something more divine than me. Sometimes that happens, at least it does to me. And so I held on to it. I held on to those principles. But what's interesting is as I've gotten into the world of transformation and mindset and spiritual work, is I have heard those three principles said the same exact way by many, many people, and they all claim to have received them divinely. So it's a really cool thing that start paying attention to your mentors and to the people out there speaking, because at some point they will mention, I know who I am, I know where I'm going, I know how to get there. And this model works for everything. What is your marriage? Who is your marriage? Like, what does your marriage look like? What is the foundational of your marriage look like? What or any relationship you're in? What is the foundation of it? What do you want it to be long term? Okay, now you know how you're going to treat it as you're going along. What does your business look like? Who is your business? Who are you serving? All the clarity things. What is your business? What do you want it to be long term? Okay, now let's backward engineer that to make it happen. So these three principles don't just work for your identity, they literally work for every part of your life if you allow them to.
So I have to share what's coming up as I listen to that. I recently spoke with a holistic psychologist and we were talking about trauma and he treated people for 20 years trauma using EMDR and other tools. And he said that we as humans have an innate ability to heal. We have an innate ability to adapt our thinking. And I just really heard that in what you were saying. Now, I totally get maybe that adaptive thinking comes from those divine, right? Those divine guidances. Maybe it comes from other ways. But here you were in high school going through what you were going through and bam, those thoughts were available to you to guide you in this direction. And to me, it really speaks to that we all have the resilience of spirit, the resilience of soul within us. And that no matter how dark it's gotten, no matter what circumstances we've been in, that ability to find that light, that ability to find that new perspective, it's available to us, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if we're uncertain, right? And I've just heard you speak to that in different ways here, where it's like that next step or that next way to think or that next direction to move in shows up and we move through, right? We get on the other side of it. We get to the next step.
Yeah. I have been reading Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. A lot of people have read this book. This is right. He's revolutionary in so many ways. But one of the things that he said that struck me so deeply last week when I was reading it's not about who you are in the moment, that you could see people's true character, not in the concentration camps, not when they were in the worst of the worst situations. When you saw their truest character is when they were liberated. And who they became after that, did they become entitled and I suffered, so now you all can just deal with it? He talked about how he was walking out in a field with a friend who was also in the concentration camp with him. And he said he went to go around the field and his friend stomped through it. And he said, I've suffered. Doesn't matter if they suffer. And so it's really not about where you're at right now. And even mental health, where we started at the beginning of this conversation, it's not about how dark your moment is now. It's about what light are you seeking in the next moment? Are you moving towards it? Just like we talked about, like you get to determine your journey. And so much of that has to do with releasing the identities and pressures and these really, we're above the only word I have it for it is worldly. We're above those worldly identifications. We can live above that if we choose it. And it's not easy, right? Like I'm not perfect here. Nobody's claiming perfection, but you can choose moment to moment who you are, where you're going and how to get there. And if you choose it consistently, life changes and becomes beautiful, becomes hopeful, it becomes abundant. And miracles will happen in your life, which people also call manifesting, right? Like these seemingly impossible things can come to pass if you follow the light, if you chase that light, even after the darkest moment.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize that it is that connection to that I am, to that divine presence, that, like you said, knowing who you are, or at least sensing who you are, that when you are manifesting from that place, when you are leading from that place, that's where you have the ability to transcend. That's where, like you said, those miracles start to show up. Such a beautiful, important thing for us all to remember. We all have moments where we're human, things come up, we get triggered. Maybe we're going for something that we've never gone for before. It feels scary. And that divine presence can get clouded or it can feel distant. And really, it sounds like even just using the affirmation, I know who I am, like using those out, like I heard that in what you were saying, like just saying those things out loud can activate your divine presence and bring you back to, okay, maybe I don't have every single thing figured out, but I can focus on the light. I can trust that's going to be there, make my way through that way.
100%. Affirmations are huge. And I mentioned people message me behind the scenes so often when they say, I don't think it's true. I think maybe I'm lying. I mentioned that I am a good mom was like a struggle for me to say because my kids were fighting. But at the end of the day, I am a good mom. I have a safe home. There's food. I care about their grades. I go to their concerts. Their emotions matter to me. Like I am a good mom. But so often we allow little things to tell us opposite. Our brains are always seeking for evidence and always seeking for threats. That's how we're built. It's beautiful. It's so cool. But it is our responsibility to get control of those things. That's one of the things that we can do. When everything else feels like it's out of control, tune into your thoughts, find the patterns, and take them out because it is not worth it by replacing them with something good. So, me saying I am a good mom for 10 days straight, because it's 10 affirmations for 10 days, it made me reflect on who I am, right? I know who I am. It made me really think, who am I as a mother? I know who I am, and actually face the truth. So affirmations don't just give you hope and joy, they make you face the truth. And the truth of it is that very thing you stated, but it's also deeper than just the words. And so when you start to face the truth, it empowers you to love that person, flaws and all, because they are good. They are worthy. They are kind. They are loving. They're all the things that you hope to be. You already are. It's just time to own them.
So good. Yeah. One of the questions I tell my students to ask is, what is the ultimate divine truth in this situation? What is the ultimate divine truth in this scenario? Because 99.9% of the time, it's not what your thoughts are telling you, not what your automatic programming is telling you.
Mhm.
And there is an ultimate divine truth that is beyond that pattern of thinking. And when you start to tune into it and look for it, and then you have this opportunity to start acting accordingly, to start viewing yourself accordingly. So good. I feel like we've covered so much. I mean, we started off talking about that dark place that
Mhm.
we all get to probably several times in our life at different phases. We talked about some ways to move through that, finding that light, just committing to it, not necessarily even having to do anything about it, aside from the, like you said, general things of self care and therapy and other things, like whatever support you need, get it. But that ultimate just commitment to self that you'll move through it and tapping into divine inherent worth and value that already is without all the boxes. And then I'm going to call them affirmations, but definitely they're guiding principles. But I know who I am. I know where I'm going. I know how to get there. I love that so much. Anything else you want to highlight?
The thing that's been on my heart and mind so consistently as I'm speaking to different audiences, and I usually speak to women, but is that we all want the next thing. We all want that next big moment. It doesn't matter if it's a new house or a new job or a love interest or any kind of relationship. It doesn't matter if it's even within inside yourself. I want to be confident in this thing or I want to conquer this mountain over here. Whatever it is, it's easy to visualize it. But I think one of the things I'm realizing that I'm not like this. This is why I'm teaching it though. Sometimes that's how it works. But we are scared to change. We're scared to transform. And this is what I see the most as I work with women is they're like, "Oh, that's so cool, but I could never do that." What? Why couldn't you do that? Of course they could do it. There's nothing I can do that's any more special than anybody else. They could do it. No, what they're actually saying is I'm scared of the journey that it takes to become that. And what I would just say is to anyone who's in the dark place, and like, this is so nice. Don't be scared of the journey. Transformation is the biggest gift we have. Becoming something new, becoming something even more diverse and complex than we were before is the journey. And the journey is beautiful. And the journey will not be beautiful if you're the same person in 5 years that you are right now. Don't be scared. We say love the journey, but the journey is transformation. So love transformation, become obsessed with it. Literally have a little love affair with transformation. Because if you do, the person that you will become will be so much cooler than you even dream of. It's so worth it.
And say yes to all of that. And I'll just add some sprinkles on the top. Manifestation requires
Mhm,
transformation. There is
mhm.
no there's no getting out of that. So, if you're into creating, then might as well, like you said, have a little love affair with transformation. I love that.
Yeah, you cannot manifest unless you transform. You can't. It's not possible. And sometimes the transformation, exactly what we talked about, is actually a release. Sometimes that's what most of the time our transformations have to do with releasing past stories, past hurts, whatever.
Identities.
Yep, really, that's what it is. But when you release it, the person that you can now be, ooh, she's pretty cool. She's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, so true. Love it. Oh, I love everything. So, how can our listeners find you? Where's the best way?
Well, I love to hang out on Instagram too much. I'm working on that currently. But it's Bridgette, my name, Brigeette dot Heller, Heller. So you can always find me on Instagram. I have a website, of course, www.thestrongandcapable.com. And on there, you can find all the things for the podcast hosting, or I have a membership called the Queen Circle. Like anything like that, you can email me through there, all the things. So really the website or Instagram are the best places.
And where can they listen to the Strong and Capable podcast?
Podcast is available lots of places, but most people listen to it on Apple and Spotify.
Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Well, I have loved having you in this episode. Probably won't be the last time. Thank you so much. You guys go find and follow Bridgette. See you in the next